Still morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Let's just go straight to for global business update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Great to have you, Michael.
Morning. Shares in Asia Pacific mostly down this morning, or rather overnight, as far as we're concerned. Hang Seng down a little, Nikkei down as well. China is shut basically because of the Golden Week holiday. And later in the week, Australia will announce its interest rate decision. But basically, markets entering the next quarter of the year, the final quarter of the year, not feeling that good about themselves. Credit Suisse, we've followed its tribulations quite closely on this program. It's reported is seeking to assure investors there are financial concerns still surrounding it all. The spread of the bank's credit default swaps, these are called CDs, which provide, or CDSs rather, which provide investors with protection against financial risk. Those have risen sharply. The spreads of those have risen actually sharply over the past couple of days. This follows reports that the Swiss lender is looking to raise capital to help it. A very tight runoff, a very tight election in Brazil. There will be a runoff. The question is, can it happen fairly calmly? It really depends on which way you think. This is the world's fourth largest democracy, but it's in a terrible economic state. And of course, there is also the incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro, who is very close to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Lula is the greener of the two. Bolsonaro has to explain away what's happening as far as logging in the Amazon is concerned. Lula plays actually quite well to a European audience, given his environmental credentials, but a slow economic recovery. 33 million Brazilians going hungry despite increasing of its welfare. It's trying to cope with high inflation, and also a load of its people actually not in formal employment, and it's considering a shift to the political left. As far as the United States is concerned, again, they'll get into motion round about our lunchtime. Stock futures are fairly mixed, basically, after not a very good week and not a very good month, actually, as far as the US stock markets are concerned. The Dow fell about 6.66 on Friday percent, notching a 3-quarter losing streak since the first quarter of 2015. So again, not doing very well. It's worst kind of performance over sort of seven years. Again, the question, I suppose, really is whether the Fed is going to be having to prop up the Treasury market in the same way that the UK Bank of England was forced to do, and whether or not it will be tightening its quantitative easing. A huge U-turn now as far as the UK is concerned. Liz Truss was widely broadcast on television yesterday saying no changes to her plans, but now they've changed the abolition of the 45% income tax rate, which applies to people who earn over £150,000 a year. Overnight, it was decided, Kwarteng decided that it was unsellable. It's a humiliation for both of them, actually, because people don't like U-turns in politics, or at least so publicly, having only said yesterday that there were no parts of the so-called mini budget. So basically, the Tories are now the Conservatives. They're starting their conference today, or rather started fringes of it yesterday, but starting the main thing today. The Chancellor will be speaking today, but both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister in big defence mode right now. He's also chosen Antonio Romeo. Now, this is an outsider to replace the Tom Scholar, whom he sacked, de Kwarteng, last week. So big changes and lots of humiliation for the Conservative Party. There were some rather interesting figures last week. I don't know whether I stressed them or whether they actually came out after we'd spoken on Friday. But it turns out the UK is apparently not in recession, and the feeling that it was caused the central bank, the Bank of England, you're looking at there, to raise interest rates by 0.5% instead of the 0.75. Economic output rose. I mean, it's still very tiny, but it rose 0.2% between April and June, and those figures have been revised up. The problem with GDP figures is they are continually revised, and people actually look at them, even though we tend to look at them for indicators of whether or not there is a recession. They tend not to be tend not to be very accurate. It is a bit worrying, actually, given that the Bank of England does have agents in all parts of the country and who report in before the Monetary Policy Committee actually meets. Oil. Now we got big an OPEC Plus meeting in the middle of the week, and it looks like they're considering a plan to cut about 1 million barrels a day as far as their output is concerned. The meeting will take place, and again, it's the first time actually that they've actually got together for a long time, actually physically getting together in Vienna to talk about this, and a significant production cut. Obviously, it will anger the United States, which has been lobbying very, very hard for Saudi to do something about this. But that's what's happening at the moment, and that's underpinning the oil price as we speak. That's the global view this morning.
All right. Michael, great to have you. Prime Minister Liz Truss was on television yesterday on the BBC, and she openly admitted that whatever they did with the mini budget was a sham. In fact, she went one step further to push the blame now on the Chancellor of the Exchequer. One other thing she did do yesterday, when the conference started in Birmingham, was to sort of show a position of strength on a plan that is already failing. And she confirmed that she didn't run it through necessary authorities, then cabinet, then treasury. I mean, if the UK has any modicum of standards, shouldn't the Prime Minister have resigned on her own with all of that happened? Now the BBC is reporting that she might have to reverse that 45p window on taxation. What is really going on? I mean, like Dr. Bati will argue, these are the things we see in third world countries, that the West, look at us in Africa and laugh at us. This is laughable.
What she admitted, I watched the interview yesterday in the same way that you did, and what she admitted yesterday was that the communication about this could have been a lot better. But it's more than laughable. It's absolutely humiliating for a big user. I mean, and actually, the 45% cut is not that fiscally important. It doesn't actually deliver a great deal, and you will find, although a lot of here's the difference. I think what it is it's Conservative MPs saying, look, it's fine to do these things in theory, but I have to sell these things on the doorstep to people, and to talk about these kind of cuts for people who earn over £150,000 a year, and making the UK more competitive. It just doesn't sit well. It's not. It shows a complete lack of experience about what voters want to be told. They don't necessarily even want to think too hard about things. I mean, what they're planning is entirely logical. All they're doing is they're challenging the hierarchy of the big spending and trying to make the UK more competitive. Their naivety is to assume that you can do all this without consulting, without explaining. And as far as your point about the OBR is concerned, I mean, yes, and the Chancellor was challenged about that this morning, and he said, well, they will be coming out for a report, but we had to act very, very quickly. Well, I mean, you pay your money, you take your choices. Personally, I would have had the OBR, if I'd been me, I would have had the OBR behind me, because I mean that's that's in a sense, even though they're independent, what you do is you say, I'm going to do this. Now, here's the independent. You have a look at that, discuss it independently, evaluate it for me, and tell me whether it's sensible or not. And I'll make a decision as a politician whether or not to do it. No, you're absolutely right. It's not laughable. It's humiliating. I mean, that's even worse, isn't it?
Well, the Prime Minister and his Chancellor, they've been humiliated, wounded, and weakened. But with the U-turn recommended by so many persons, including also the IMF, will it amount to any damage control? However, persons who have had to, pay higher rates, how about, the pound sterling that has been behaving like a yo-yo? So does this U-turn save Britain from the economic suicide that was more or less imposed on it by Truss and, Chancellor Kwarteng? And what is the guarantee that persons like Michael Gove, the former Leveling Up Minister, and Grant Shapps, who is also supporting him, are trying to create problems at the Conservative Party conference, and also suggesting that Truss has to go before December? How does this help? That's one. Two, Elon Musk, yes, he had this big event, the Artificial Intelligence Day event on Friday or so. And he's coming up with humanoid robots, Optimum, we're told it is called, and that eventually it will be less than $20,000. And we're told that this humanoid robot can do so many tasks. Where does that leave the world of work? What is the future of the world of work? If robots are going to replace us, I hope that a day will not come when a robot will be a television anchor.
Yeah, right. All right. Can you remember how old you were when you first saw ASEA in Sweden actually using welding robots? I'll tell you what year it was, because I remember it well. It was 1975. I don't know whether you still remember it, but that's what they did. What did that do? That took away the boring part of repetitive labor, and what it did was it assured, because you could actually measure the quality of the welding or the spot welding that was actually taking place, as far as I think it was Volvo that first used them. Anyway, that's a long time ago. Yeah, Elon Musk is a great sort of believer in the future. When I see the first robotic person sitting in your studio commenting on the world as you do very, very competently, I'll believe it. Until then, no, it's taking care of it. The world of work is changing, but the world of work is changing very, very differently, isn't it? I mean, who is developing AI? Who is actually bringing money to the poor? Are robots going to do that? I don't think they will. I mean, I may be wrong, but Doctor, you and I probably won't have to worry about this in our lifetime. I think that's the important thing. But I think until we're actually reading opinion that is valued, and because we're all in that kind of business, then I'll begin to believe in robots. At the moment, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. What's happening as far as the government is concerned here, as I said, is humiliating. I would step away from the orthodoxy of the FT if I dare, the IMF if I dare, and also Mark Carney if I dare, to say that actually what needs to happen is the big word productivity. I've heard nobody talking about that. If it involves less taxes and more austerity and better targeted spending, then what's wrong with that? I mean, unfortunately, what we're in at the moment, and the IMF. I mean, let's get the IMF in perspective. Didn't hear them talking about they're based in the United States. Do you know what the top federal rate tax is in the United States? Shall I tell you what it is? It's 37%. Now, what is that doing about equality in the United States? And how much are you earning? And when you pay $200,000 a year? The IMF is based in the United States, and it dares to criticise the UK and other countries about the world about inequality when we're talking about a top tax rate of 45%. How does that work? No, I'm sorry. This is not what we're looking at here. Is a naive and young government trying to attack some of the sacred cows that have got us to this kind of position at the moment. The world is changing, and the world is changing away from easy money and money trees into a world that needs to be thinking very seriously about itself. That's what now. They're not doing very well. They're not communicating it, and they're young and naive, and they've been humiliated. Personally, if I were a politician, I were a prime minister, I would not be listening to what the media says, and I'd not be listening to what the market says, because as far as I'm concerned, what happened to sterling was in the vagabond stage of things. I mean, it was clear that that's what's going to happen, and sure enough, it bounced back. What does that mean? Why has sterling suddenly bounced back this morning when something which is as fiscally as insignificant as a reduction of 45% tax rate, because it is, has actually happened? Does that assume that the markets actually have a view or can actually think about adding things up arithmetically? Shows you workings. No, they don't. They're doing it because they can.
All right. One thing is certain, Michael. People have made so much money on the sterling. They've had a good run, and that's why they're done with the sterling. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you. Now for business update across the Africa continent, Rutus is here. Rutus, how's it going?
I hope I don't detect some shading fruit from you
guys
on this dramatic U-turn in the UK.
They've cashed out on the sterling.
I hope. All right. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers, and happy public holiday to everybody out there. So Nairametrics has some news here that Geregu Power PLC is going to list on the NGX on the 5th of this month. And the company hasn't confirmed this yet, but apparently they got a hold of an approval to list. Now, they're going to be listing by introduction. That means that you're not going to be creating new shares. Existing shareholders will just will sell a portion of their holdings to the wider public. It's understood that it's about 2.5 billion shares that will be released at about 100 naira a share, valuing the company at 250 billion naira on the first day. Now, Geregu back, you remember, I think it was July, they stepped into the capital markets on the debt side, where they raised 40 billion naira in senior unsecured bonds as part of a 100 billion naira bond issuance program. And the company did say that they would be using those funds for, working capital, expansion, and so on and so forth. So if this does turn out to be confirmed by the company, and Nairametrics is pretty reliable, so we'll see, we'll get the confirmation. But if that happens, you're looking at the first listing from the power privatization exercise that we saw many moons ago. And also, if you think about the liquidity issues in the power sector, and Geregu has some pretty good ratings from a number of ratings agencies here in the country. If you think about the fact that bond issuance, that 40 billion bond issuance back in July was oversubscribed, investors have high confidence in this company, and so we'll see what happens if this listing takes place. Now again, this is only the second listing that we're seeing this year on the NGX. I think the first one was Boa Foods back in January, and that was also a listing by introduction as well. And we've seen the issues with the NGX, with leadership, the board shuffle, and talking about issues around compensation and so on and so forth. So they need some good news. So again, we hope this will be confirmed. It's a public holiday, so maybe we'll get confirmation on this on tomorrow. But it would be, as far as the power sector is concerned, and seeing more publicly listed firms, especially from this particular sector, that would be pretty healthy. More power, or rather more energy news. NNPC, we heard this announcement over the weekend, I think it was on Saturday, acquired the downstream assets of OVH Energy. That includes, I think, about 385 retail stations. There's also acquired, I think it was a Sapa a jetty. Also, that's part of the assets that they've also acquired as well. One of the largest jetties in the nation. So pretty much, if you look at the press releases from Mele Kyari, Group Chief Executive of the NNPCL and also head of the OVH Energy, they're celebrating a consolidation in the downstream sector, more supply for as far as downstream products are concerned. NNPC's footprint, it's a commercial entity now, is expanded as far as downstream retail products are concerned as well. And it's pretty good news for the industry. OVH, they handle the Owando branded stations. We understand that they will now rebrand as NNPCL retail stations. That rebranding, we understand, is supposed to be concluded by the end of 2023. So, and we have, in fact, as a matter of fact, Moman, Major Oil Marketers of Nigeria, they congratulated them. We have the CEO of Ardova PLC and the chairman of Moman on the Global Business Report this morning at 11:30. So we'll talk about that a whole lot more with him. It's a public holiday. It is Nigeria 62, we have to, I guess, take stock of where the economy is. Reagan's words, are you better off now than you were
4 years ago?
Or is it 62 years ago? So I guess people will debate that as well. And then speaking of taxes, William Ruto, Friday said he's looking at a wealth tax for tycoons in Kenya. Now, this thing has stalled in Parliament. I have to put that there. It didn't get through when they tried this, but he's trying again. He says they want to rely less on debts from other nations. Loans from other nations. He wants to try to raise revenue, and many say this is what Truss should have done, and Kwarteng. They should have looked at the wealthier side of the UK and raised taxes on those guys instead of what they did. But that's Ruto again. The man is working. He's working.
I mean, so when you say many say, that's an argument. I mean, if you're of the Thomas Piketty school of thought, you'll be like, okay, go to the rich, tax them, get everything out of them. But the other argument the UK, the likes of Truss, will make is the fact that, okay, let's not tax these guys too much so that they can bring the talent in and grow the economy. But either ways, you have to still take that money from a group of people, which happens to, the rich people. And that's why things will stabilize out. But a lot of people are saying, probably let's see how this tax goes in Kenya. Will it have a knock-on effect on people like the bling man Mike Sonko himself? And some other big families. Uhuru, we didn't do him Uhuru and all of that. His former boss and all of that. But he has to raise revenue. Kenya is in dire straits. That subsidy has dipped into the economy, and it's biting them so hard. Real quickly, I'd like to talk about 62 years of our economy.
Yes.
I mean, so just a quick review. We were very bullish when we started. There were a lot of possibilities, but we lost along the wayside. I think oil increased everything, increased the momentum. When we started, 60s, late into the 60s, about 10 billion there about GDP. 70s, we had a boom. Yom Kippur happened. Crude oil price jacked up from $3 per barrel to $12 per barrel. Was a big boom. By the 80s, we're already inching towards about 80 to 90 to 100 billion, thereabout. Then we had another slump in 83 because all the monies we made, we wasted it. So the problem with Nigerian economy has always been the squandering of opportunities. We had a good time to frame up things in the 70s, but 80s we had wasted everything. And that's why we had the first recession that hit in the 80s, and we never recovered from it. Because when that recession happened, our lives never remained the same. It led to a government going, it led to the debates on SAP, our currency and all of that. Things had gone down. The 90s, again, we had another opportunity, the Gulf War. Did we do well? Not really too well. We stabilized, corruption came in, took all our money and resource out until the early 2000s. We had a golden chance again, Obasanjo has gone up. All of that achievement being wasted. So you can see like 4 cycles that we've gone up, gone down, gone up, gone down. But you see, one thing I see a lot of potential in this country.
Well, will it be taken as the other 4 cycles you mentioned? Will that opportunity be taken again or missed?
If we get leadership right, that's why 2023 matters a great deal. I see a lot of potential. I bet on Nigeria. If I'm not a betting man, but if I can bet, I'll bet on the possibility of this country. Because you see, amidst all of this madness, we've had a strong diaspora that has kicked in dollars, even if we're not doing well with trade, into the economy. We have an informal sector, that we need to be able to bolster and give property rights. So those are the exciting parts I see of this economy. And when there's harmonization and there's good direction, like I was saying this morning, the success of Nigeria will choke.
Oh, yeah.
It will be
Agreed.
very good, and the world will see it when
Agreed.
it happens.
Agreed.
But we need to get it right.
Let me start with the word tax that President Ruto is considering in Kenya. You know, it's very controversial.
It is.
They have it in some of the Scandinavian countries, in France, in Norway, in one or two other countries, Switzerland, Spain, but most countries that introduce wealth tax, they backtracked.
Yeah.
Because they say, oh, it could frighten away the wealthy. And it could also discourage investment, trickle down economics, all of that and all of that. But, okay, certainly Ruto is looking for money.
He is.
He has removed the subsidies. He wants to introduce wealth tax. But, a wealth tax is not just given like that, as a solution. What other countries do is that they introduce income tax, they introduce property tax, which at the same time, we tend to, target the small percentile of the privileged members of the community. But clearly, we have seen in Kenya a president who is at least trying out ideas. The opposite of what he's trying to do is what they have done, in Britain, and Truss and Kwarteng. Have gotten their fingers burnt.
Burnt badly.
Even if they struggled with it quite a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, Geregu, it's a Genco, right?
Indeed.
The generating company. That's Femi Otedola, right?
Yes, indeed. He's
Who
the
is
chair.
the chairman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they want to go to the stock exchange. Well, I think it shows some confidence, some boldness, if we may use that phrase. At a time when the equity market in Nigeria is depreciating. Portfolio investors are running away. In the last 3-4 months, that stock market has not been doing well.
Well, I mean,
So
we're up
for
14%.
somebody to
We're
now
up
say-
14% so far. We're up 14% so far this year.
Yeah,
But I mean,
but
yeah, I
we've
get
not
you.
been-
The foreign investors have been leaving.
we've not
Yeah,
been doing well.
yeah, foreign investors have
But
been leaving.
I understand the electricity sector
That's what value of
trying to come into the stock market. They have almost all these power plants. They have balance sheet problems.
Yes, that is correct.
Maybe if you go and list on the stock exchange, you can address your balance sheet, challenges. Maybe that will help.
Why are you laughing?
So, but beyond all of that, as an ordinary man who needs electricity service, I'm concerned that the national grid of Nigeria continues to collapse.
Yep.
So while we may say Geregu or other plants, we follow the example of Geregu and go to the stock exchange. How about the residual
ordinary
point?
man. Yeah.
About electricity,
Yep.
we generate less than 4,000 megawatts. We have installed capacity of over 12,000 megawatts.
Yep.
The other day, the grid collapsed up to the point of 38 megawatts for a country of over 200 million people. Why the likes of Femi Otedola may be looking for ways to address their balance sheet. We, the ordinary people, we just want electricity.
Right.
And we want to be properly served.
Right.
And we want the entire value chain, to be looked at so that Nigeria can properly position itself for productivity and efficiency.
Indeed.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Dr.
Doctor always brings it to the ordinary man. He always brings it down to the ordinary man, and we need that.
A lot of hate speech. What they say on the street, they say water. A lot of water in there, Dr. Abasi.